church is one foundation. It's Jesus Christ the Lord. She is his new creation, by water and the word. From heaven he came and sought her to be his holy bride. With his own blood he bought her, and for her life he died. Mid toil and tribulation and tumult of a war, she waits the consummation of peace forevermore. Till with the vision glorious, her longing eyes are blessed. That great church victorious, she'll be the church of rest. Oh, happy ones and holy, Lord, give us grace that we like them, the meek and lowly, lead on high may dwell with thee. Yeah, they're past the border mountains, wearing sweet bells that find with thee by.
Well, Michael, we are here tonight on Restless with a lot of friends because we are here to save the PCA. Michael, how are you doing? Are you ready?
Hashtag save the PCA.
That's right.
I like the hyperbole of it. I know that drives some people crazy, but I want to just play into it. It's all over, right? It's so over. It's never been so over, but we want to bring it all back.
Just to all of our friends who have joined us so graciously on this live stream, who will have introduced themselves in a second. Michael loves to immediately try to destroy any podcast or live stream in the first 5 seconds, just to make sure it's over, everyone leave. But
I'm so sorry.
So get your hot water, get your adaptogens going, because we are here for the Save the PCA report. We're going to talk about what's going on, and we get the joy of doing it with elders from across the country. And so why don't we have the guys here introduce themselves, and then we will spend the next hour. So if you are one of the people live streaming this, there will be obviously plenty of other people who will watch it later. You can comment. You can put your comments in the chat. If you have a question, I can pull it up on screen and we can throw it to the panel as well. But the goal tonight is for the PCA to have a group of PCA elders, ruling elders and teaching elders, react to the Save the PCA report. And so thank you guys for joining us. Why don't you guys introduce yourself across the screen? So from me, we'll go to John then.
Hey, my name is John St. Martin. I'm a pastor in Mankato, Minnesota, Reformation Presbyterian Church. Been a member and then eventual minister in the PCA since 2009-ish. And so graduated from Covenant Seminary. I'm a PCA guy, been involved in lots of different things. So
great. We'll keep going across.
I'm Jacob Hale. I'm an associate pastor in Meridianville, Alabama, at North Hills Church. And I've been in the PCA for since 2011 or 12-ish, so about over a decade now. And as a member, and then I was ordained in 2020, and I've been a teaching elder since then.
Hi, everybody. My name's Robert Hassler. I'm a pastor in Burke, Virginia. I'm the son of the PCA, so I've been in the PCA my whole life, born into it. Lord willing, I'll die in it.
Awesome.
My name's Corey Wing. I'm a ruling elder under care. So been a ruling elder for about 4 or 5 years. Been under care for about 3 of those, and heading towards licensure and ordination, God willing, next year, sometime next year. And finishing up seminary with Lamp Seminary, which is a PCA thing. So I did not grow up PCA. I grew up in the Baptist world, and I've been in the PCA about 10 years. And yeah, I, again, hope to die in the PCA. I'm on staff at Shearer Presbyterian Church, and I hope to be buried there one day. So yeah, I love it here.
I'm Eric Monti. I'm a ruling elder from Southeast Texas, Riverside Church in Beaumont. Been in the PCA for, I don't know, somewhere around 20 years or so, maybe a little over that. Just as a kid in college, and then eventually marrying a girl from the local church, and now we're raising our family in it.
That's awesome. Well, what a thing. Everyone here loves the PCA, so everybody wants what's good for it. Nobody here is to destroy it. And so that's great. I guess I rarely talk about what I do in the PCA. I'm a church planner in Wisconsin, ordained by the PCA. Michael, why don't you start with you can tell me the story of where this report came from. You can either talk about how you how this first came across to you, or talk about it more generally, and then we'll have everyone else add in things that you forget. So I want to talk about why would everyone here get together. So we're going to talk about Save the PCA. And so Michael, where did this hashtag come from, and where did the report come from?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact. I was trying to find online the full timeline a little bit earlier. It's around a month ago. I think the first post I found was September 16th. You have Michael Foster, who is former minister of the PCA, left the PCA, but he is in the broader Reformed world and has a large platform online. So he started to tweet out videos of different churches within the PCA where you have women leading worship, or just screen grabs of scrolling through different, maybe pages with leadership of a church and showing, hey, there's, a lot of women listed as shepherdesses, or, with the elders, or there's no diaconate, or if there is a diaconate, there's deacons and there's deaconesses and things like that. And some of them, were just that. Here's a church website. Some were live streams that churches had put online. And from that, I don't know when it turned into the hashtag Save the PCA, but he just started to point out, hey, there's a bunch of these churches in the PCA that seem to have functional female officers. So not maybe ordained women in the church, but in some cases, some of it was even went as far as, hey, these women had to go through the same kind of preparation that the elders did, and they had to do many of the same things. They had to be voted on by the congregation. We laid hands on them to do this work and things like that. And so through that, over the last month or so, it has just sparked this, massive discussion amongst the PCA, of which we are all a part. And so we thought it would be helpful to get together and try to discuss it a little bit more in detail as churchmen.
I would like to thank all the people who made this report, because back when there was the live stream of the service started, that where Erwin Ince was there, and there's the minister who left for the Roman Catholic Church. It's actually where this answered the question you and I had, because when you and I reacted to that, we said, what did he mean when he said, let's have the shepherdesses? Oh man, I'm losing my voice. We got this. What does it mean when the shepherdesses are going to come forward to distribute communion? And we were really confused, and now we're going to be concerned. So
right, yes, no, and I should add then, from that, then Foster, working with others, put out some kind of report, large document, where there's a website now with that information. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a spreadsheet guy. I took a look at that spreadsheet. I was like, well, I'm done. I'm not. I was going to wait till someone else gives me all the nitty gritty details, what I need to know from that. But there's a lot of info there. And I know Jesper Jensen is in the chat right now. He's one of the guys who's helped with that, I know, and put that out. So there's also a full report with, hey, what churches have some of these things? What should we be looking into, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you guys want to add on what Pastor Michael said? I'm going to post the link to the website in the chat here. Or what caught your attention about this, or any details he left out?
So Michael Foster, who has become rather, infamous, famous, both, through all of this. He and I started talking about this, to Pastor Michael's point, about September 7th, if memory serves, which was right about the time that that church up in DC Metro, did all of the stuff that kind of hit the fan, right? With the pastor making a big public announcement and leaving. And yes, shepherdesses come up and serve communion, but also, hey, shepherdesses, one of which was Erwin Ince's wife, by the way. Shepherdesses, please come up and lay hands on this teaching elder who's leaving for Rome. And I'm like, what is happening? So I mean, yeah. So as a ruling elder, yes, under care, yes, on staff at a church, yes, all that's true. But to you guys' point of kind of what you were saying offline before we started about what would your average ruling elder think? It's rather unbelievable. I mean, like, this isn't, if you'd have told me that was happening at like a Methodist church, a PCUSA church, I'd have been like, well, yeah. I mean, if Protestia would have put that up and just been like, where did you think this happened? I would have been like, oh, it could have happened in any number of places. But if you'd have said it was us, I'd have been like, no, but it was. So I think that started kind of the further, deep dive that Foster ended up kind of going, man, if this is happening here, well, where else is it happening? And then it kind of just snowballed from there.
Eric, let me ask you, what did the average ruling elder think? 20 years in the PCA, what did you think when you began to see the report and this stuff?
Yeah, I'm happy to be that proxy.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll play that role. It was just alarming. Like the report's alarming, and the situation at various churches that we've seen online has been just alarming because of a couple of reasons for me. The first is that I read things kind of plainly. Maybe that's because I'm simple. I don't really know, but when I read, when I read the passages in the scripture that talk about officers, whether we're talking about Timothy or Titus, or you look at the pattern established even in the Old Covenant as well, with how God set up his people, and you go back to Genesis and the leadership construct there, and between man and woman, and you just look all throughout Scripture, and there's a beautiful distinction between roles, between men and women, and it has nothing to do with value. It has everything to do with working together the way God has intended us, whether that's in our private lives or in our public lives. And anyways, so for me, it was just a simple thing where it's like, I don't understand this. For one, I don't see the model being demonstrated at various places to be what I read from Scripture. And I also don't see that model to be what a plain reading of, like, even the BCO would say, where it's like, various roles are for men. It's like, okay, well, I mean, so I'm in a church that recently was a plant. Like, we're relatively young still. And I remember when we were installed as elders at the particularization service, and we're going through, and it's like, okay, at some part of the BCO, it talks about putting a cloth on the table. It's like, like I don't really understand what this is about, but we made vows that we were going to do our best to adhere to the polity here. And it says that, there's something in there about there being a cloth over the elements or over the table, or, that kind of thing. I'm getting it wrong. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's that idea that I want our vows, I want what we have said we believe to mean something. And our people want that as well. Like, they want to know that you are who you say you are.
That's definitely true. This tonight's live stream is certainly brought to you by keeping the vows you made at your ordination. That we are going to try and uphold and promote the form of church government we hold to as biblical, as laid out, as Eric was talking about. Is there anything else just about how the report came out, or as you saw it, that someone wants to add before I start asking some more specific questions about its context? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, there was a similar kind of report done in February, I believe, on just deaconesses. And it was from an account on Twitter, congregant in a PCA church. And he got dragged all over the place for, the same things that Foster is getting dragged for. And so in some ways, I think that this is a continuation of that, revelation. Somebody asked, in the chat, surprised the lack of awareness. I think there's some percentage of PCA people who were aware that this is a thing, if they're in those presbyteries or more well-traveled. I mean, I've been to a lot of PCA churches in my tenure, and it was never a thing that I noticed or experienced. And I think that report really spoke to that a little bit, in the sense of, while, I don't know, they said 7% or something like that, maybe made their list. So 92% of churches wouldn't make the list. And so if you go to 10 churches, 9 out of 10, you're probably not going to notice anything. And even of the one, depending on what their practice is, you might not notice it in a worship service. So, but yeah, so I think there's been kind of a growing awareness of this online. And but yeah, I think it traces all the way back even to then.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get there, but a lot of these churches are concentrated in certain presbyteries. And so if you're in a different part of the country, it's going to be less frequent. I'll say what I was ignorant of before the report. I did know, obviously, going back when I was coming into the PCA, someone had me listen to Ligon Duncan and Tim Keller's conversation about deaconesses back in the day. So I knew there was some dissatisfaction in some circles with that. But again, we are talking about things to the degree and the extent of, what I didn't realize was how wide and different the practices were, including shepherdesses, at least one woman listed as the pastor of women on their website, gospel workers, men and women, unordained, like that the breadth of what kinds of new officers were being invented, or new functions in the church, was what shocked me. And then the second thing that shocked me was the seeming feeling, at least right away, and was that there actually wasn't that much that could be done about this. And that was for the moment for me where I was like, no, that's where I have decided to draw the line, that there's nothing we can really do. But yeah. All right. So I think we should ask this question, because it's, as this conversation has went on online, I have noticed people attacking Michael Foster and his involvement with this. Maybe we will have him on a future live stream to talk to him about this. I've seen people randomly attacking a conference I've never heard of. I've seen all kinds of credibility things coming into this, or that he would be bad intention. Corey, it sounds like you know him, so perhaps you can't tell us. You're welcome to. But I just want to ask, are you guys mad at Michael Foster? Or do you guys think that this is bad intentioned? Is this coming from a bad place? And so I'll just let anyone who wants to answer that question to go.
Again, I'm not. You'll learn. Some of you know me on the call. Some of you don't. You'll learn quickly. I'm not shy. So I'll be a whipping boy. That's fine. A lot of you are TEs that have much more to lose than me anyway. Michael and I are friendly. I don't know that, we haven't went and had beers together, but I've run into him in a number of conferences. He and I've chatted back and forth, a number of times, even privately. I think he had and has the most altruistic desire to see a denomination that ordained him and that he still loves be pure, and to Eric's point, for men to uphold the vows that they took. I mean, that can't be overstated. I mean, that sounds like such a simplistic thing, like, oh, we took vows, and I get in a society where half of the marriage vows end in divorce, whether you're inside the church or outside the church, it doesn't seem to matter. I get that vows in 2025 don't seem to mean much in most circles, but in the church and amongst men of God that are avowing themselves to serve the church and knowing what Scripture says about the church, that it was paid for with the very blood of Christ. I mean, that should mean something. So I think for Michael, it was, hey, I'd like to come home. He's been pretty public about that. I don't think I'm, spilling the beans there. He'd like to come home to the PCA. His elders at his local church there in Cincinnati, the greater Cincinnati area, were skeptical. And so as he's trying to convince his elders, hey, let's, PCA's, it's solid, you're going to be safe there. Out comes all this crap, and so, I mean, God love him. It's had to have been hard on him, even at his home church, even with some of his own elders, to go, oh, well, maybe it's not as healthy as I thought it was. And what I'm about to say, he has not said to me, and I've not said to him. This is strictly from me. But part of me thinks he had to have known the price this would cost. And he did it anyway. And what price is that? I am of the opinion, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But I'm of the opinion that any hopes he had of coming home to the PCA are gone. That ship has completely sailed. There's enough men that now think he's, toxic and operating in bad faith or whatever buzzwords we love to use, that they would kibosh any kind of attempt of him to come, back into our denomination. So whatever people may think, the integrity it takes to pull a trigger like this, knowing, because if anything, Michael's not a dumb guy. Knowing that this was probably going to cost him his one opportunity to come home, that's an incredible amount of courage and integrity. And, and yes, like what you guys were, saying, Matt, of all of the hyperbolic just insanity. You've doxed women. I got that one from some lady about a week ago of how women have been doxed, and I'm like, who's been doxed? You have public websites that anyone can log on to. This wasn't private information. This was out there for God and everyone to see. I mean, what are you talking about? So I mean, the whole thing has become almost comically ridiculous. But no, I think to Michael's point, I think he had the best of intentions. I think he still has good intentions. And those with bad intentions, and I don't mean to paint with a very broad brush, but they're exposing themselves. So paint away. Those with bad intentions don't like being exposed. I mean, germs like to stay in the dark.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add? Yeah, Robert, I just want to say we do have a rule, Corey, you almost broke it, is there is no blackpilling. We will govern. Michael may have made you think it was over by his intro, but
it's not over. No, what I was saying is it's so over, but also we're so back. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this, because we're so back right now.
Robert,
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, just to echo that, never black pill. I think two things that I noticed with the response to Michael Foster's, dare I call it, a social media campaign. I think that's a fair and accurate term. The first thing was that, there was an objection that, well, Michael Foster is an outsider to the PCA, and therefore he shouldn't be commenting on things that are going inside our denomination. I hear that, and I think that doesn't really cut both ways. I mean, I don't think that's ever stopped anybody from talking about what's going on in other denominations. I've never heard a teaching elder say we shouldn't comment on what's going on in Baptist churches or in non-denominational churches or the main line because of, we're not part of that. So I don't think that really stands up to scrutiny personally. The other thing, and I'll just say it, I see a sort of knee-jerk reaction when anything like this happens to sort of blame social media, and sort of social media becomes the boogeyman. And I'll say this right now, and for people in the chat too, if anybody wants to sit down and buy me a beer and lament about how social media is doing XYZ, like, you can do that all day. I will take the beer and I will sit there and I will listen to you complain about social media. The response I'm going to give is like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like, it's some point, like, this is just the reality that we live in now. And I think what the stressor is that social media has been able to emphasize our connectionalism as a denomination in ways that we probably haven't felt in a while. And that's because now anybody can go onto anybody's YouTube page if you're streaming your worship service, and I can see what you're doing in your worship service. Like I just couldn't do that, 50 years ago. I couldn't do that 25 years ago in a way that I can now. And, I think that's going to continue to be an issue that we're dealing with. But I think the wrong answer is to say, well, let's just lament social media. I think the right response is to say, well, how do we live with this new reality that we have? I often tell people, I hear complaints about social media that I'm like, that would apply to Martin Luther and the printing press. And as Protestants, we probably shouldn't make those arguments. So I think we need to be more self-aware of those kind of things. I think maybe even, and I'm including myself in this, a little more mature about just the reality that we find ourselves in now, and kind of start thinking more proactively rather than reactively on this.
Yeah, that's really good. Also, I'll jump in and just say, everything that you want to bemoan about social media, Soren Kierkegaard said about the printing press. So this is old hat at this point. And genie's out of the bottle. There is social media. You can't stop it. People can share stuff. People can talk about it. And that's not bad. It's not in some way against our polity to talk openly and publicly about things. That's actually incredibly Presbyterian. Now, we don't want to be the kinds of men that allow pressure campaigns from outside to shape how we govern within the church. I hope that's not true, right? So if we find out, hey, there's a bunch of things that are not quite true and we're just being manipulated, I hope that doesn't affect then, how we move forward, how we vote at the Presbyterian General Assembly level, all of those things. But the idea that because somebody has shown you something is going on that they know many in the PCA are going to find objectionable, that the problem is that they're showing you. It's just not true. And even if we talk about this a lot on our podcast, but let's say even if it wasn't done in the exact right way, that is still not the bigger issue at hand, right? If my child comes and tattles on their sibling for something, and I don't really want them to be a tattletale, but also what their sibling was doing was pretty wrong. They maybe didn't do it in quite the right way. And I may say, hey, don't do it like that next time. And also, by the way, I need to go talk to your brother because he needs to be disciplined, right? These things don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? We don't have to pretend that this, isn't okay. Of course it's okay. It's just what's happening. It's just true.
Yeah. Again, I don't know Michael Foster. I've just, as I've posted about this a lot, I've started to have some of the people who've made this send me messages, which, good for them. Let me just say, if they're all bad intentioned, here's the answer. The check engine light is on. Don't get mad at the check engine light. Go figure out, go actually do things that will address the problem, right? I mean, I don't like it when the check engine light comes on in my 08 Honda Odyssey with all my children. I don't like that, but I go fix it. And to be clear, being from Wisconsin, you can buy me a beer for almost any. We can talk. You can complain to me about whatever you want, as long as you do so. Okay, I want to ask some of you here, because I think one of the most important terms we can help people understand is what do we mean when they're describing a functional female officer? What is that referring to in practice, and why is that a good term? Right? Someone, yeah. One of you guys want to jump in and start talking through this term? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the big criticisms of the report is it drags too many people that claim what they're doing isn't what is being claimed. And so perhaps that's true for them. And so, I don't know, you use the language and it became problematic, or they misidentified you. But to me, I mean, maybe other people have other definitions, and I think they define it on the website, but it's leadership and it's worship. And so if it's some sort of parallel elder board or involved in the session meetings in an overly, advisory role, maybe they even vote, but it's not counted, kind of like that type of thing. That's very concerning, but it's mostly seen, especially in these live streams, in the leading of worship. And, we talk about the PCA being a big tent denomination, and as I've come in, I've visited a lot of churches, and the worship services are different, right? Some are more contemporary. Some are only led by the minister. Some have elders. And then in my experience, there's been some very minor elements of the worship service that kind of lay participants would lead. But what we're seeing in a lot of these clips is somebody who you're calling a shepherdess or a deaconess is leading the call to worship or the pastoral prayer, or, things that even in the most loosey churches I've been to, like, obviously were meant for the minister to do or the elders to do. And so to me, that's the functional side of it. Like, whatever title you want to use, we can debate about, deacons in deaconesses in Calvin's Geneva, which were trying to be employing widows to take care of the poor and the needy. That's not what he was doing. This is, I made a little post. It's like, oh yeah, we have women helping care for other women. That's great. Titus 2. Oh yeah, they also lead our worship service and sit on our session meetings. It's like, oh, that's, yeah, we don't do that. So the shift is not so much like every church has women serving in care, Titus 2 discipleship ministries. Everybody does. It's even in our BCO, the exhortation to sessions to have women in church. This assistance to the deacons, whatever, all of these different dynamics. The real shift is when, okay, we have these women who are doing mercy ministry, but they're also leading worship. Why are they doing both of those things? Like that, to me, that's the real disconnect. So whether it's worship specifically or kind of the more nuanced kind of leadership dynamics, that's what I think of when I think of a functional elder. I forget the term, but
yeah, functional female elder. I do think it's funny that people want to make it seem like it's a challenge to distinguish between, oh yeah, I asked this older woman to help care for this woman who I knew was hurting in the church, and she's on the website, and she helps lead the church, and she took the vows that all the elders and I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that that's a confusing and very similar situation. Like that's not good. Jacob, you've been quiet, but do you want to add, and if you do, again, there's a lot of other guys who could speak into this, but what are some of the functions that you've seen women engaged in leading worship or in serving in leadership in the church that have been like, oh, this is reserved for men, or this is reserved for elders as we understand it biblically and as Presbyterians?
Yeah. I'm just thinking through. I think John hit on some good one, leading pastoral prayers, and often it can be I like the term functional female officer, because oftentimes what I've seen is a lot of kind of messing with language a little bit to obfuscate exactly what's going on, or to get it past some of the restrictions in the BCO and various things. But so I've seen changing pastoral prayer to prayer of the church or prayer of the people, that kind of thing, to make it seem a little bit more palatable to have non-ministers offering this prayer. I've seen, and we've seen women, giving calls to worship, women offering exhortations of a kind during the worship service. There's big stink about that recently. And obviously communion as well. I was really upset the last GA. My presbytery is the one who sent up the overture for who can not distribute the sacraments. And we had a big debate in our presbytery on that and the reasons for that. And I was really hoping that would pass, but unfortunately it did not. But I think really, apart from preaching and offering the benediction, there hasn't been much I haven't seen women do. And a lot of that's from what Foster's been doing, sharing some of these more egregious examples. I haven't seen it so much personally, but seeing it online in clips and hearing reports of. Maybe you guys can offer more examples, but I can't think of anything besides preaching or offering the benediction.
I think the benediction may have been on the table. Do others want to give some examples here that you would be concerned about or have seen? Right.
I can't
just say the Tim Keller. I was going to say the Tim Keller quote that a woman can do anything an ordained man can do has shifted to a woman can do anything an ordained man can do except preach a sermon and say the words of institution.
Bang.
And that's crazy.
That it is.
Yeah, I think anytime you have this, in order to make decisions, there must be female representation, at least with you, right? Like if they're not with you, right? They're not sitting with the elders. If they're not sitting with the deacons, then therefore they're, in some ways, their position is impoverished or whatever we might say. They're not being recognized. So, but even once you begin to do that, you begin to say that leadership in the church is only possible if you have these women present. What does that say? It says that there's a kind of authority that they have and bestow that does not actually reside in the elders or the deacons on their own. Just a heads up, I just sent Michael Foster the link, so he might be joining us in a minute here.
So let me ask about this, because this is the other process, the other practice. So we would, so again, included in this, as you can find listed on their website, there is listed female shepherds, shepherdesses, deaconesses. There's this other thing that goes on that is described that I think people might not understand what's happening, but it is the elimination of deacon boards for mercy teams or other forms of ministry. Can someone, I think that if you just don't know the Book of Church Order a lot, you may not understand what's being done there. Does someone want to explain this practice, what's happening here?
I mean, I don't know specifically. I don't know a specific example, but based on just kind of the reading, it's actually described. They addressed the issue in the study committee report on women in ministry that the PCA did, I think, in 2017. They addressed this this practice of not having ordained deacon, an ordained diaconate, and instead having unordained men and women basically be the deacon board. And even in that report, that it takes a pretty strong stance against that practice. So my sense is that was probably something that was getting popular as sort of the how do we do what we want to do while trying to stay as close to, within the technical terms of the BCO. And I think my understanding, I could be totally wrong on this, but my understanding is that has been progressively sort of being eliminated. I don't know as many churches that are doing that now. However, I would be more confident about that if we had the overture passed that required deacon reporting, but that didn't get passed at GA. So I don't know. There's probably still some of that going on, but my understanding is that's kind of like an older practice, and there's kind of some newer stuff being developed now.
Foster, I think you can unmute yourself in a second here. I muted you to not get the feedback. I'll say there was a question in the chat about and that I'll answer before we go on. This is the thing that actually, again, it kind of incensed me to make me want to be involved in the issue. Was I am a guy in Wisconsin. I am far from where anyone knows what the PCA is. I was just starting to see this idea that, well, there actually isn't anything to do. This is just divisive because the BCO doesn't address these things directly. They're not forbidden. And the moment I heard this being presented, I said, our church is in a constitutional crisis that is unbelievable, because apparently our book of church order of Presbyterian government is not designed to protect and promote biblical church Presbyterian government at all. I don't know why I'm not declaring myself CEO at the church plant. Doesn't say anything about that, because there's apparently nothing. You right. And so this is just what it blew my mind that this was happening, but that it was okay. It also,
Matt and I have talked about this quite a bit. We've just, I don't know, gone off on it a few times, and maybe just on our own. I don't know if this has ended up on the podcast, but hearing people say, well, because these words aren't used directly in the BCO, I guess we can't do anything.
Right.
That can't be true. Like, that doesn't make any sense,
because
it literally cannot be right.
Because that means the book of church order is not designed to deliver Presbyterian and biblical church government.
Right. Which of course it is.
And as a church planter, it's insane to me that you would eliminate officers, deacons or elders of any kind for any reason, because I'm desperate for God to send us gifted and godly men like Eric, right? So that we could particularize, and deacons so we could better serve. And it's insane that we would do this. So
I think that part of the problem you have is that people don't understand or appreciate what it means to be ordained. It's very easy from the outside looking in, and even from the inside, if you haven't really read and dug into it, to say, well, the functions of the deacon are nominally still being accomplished, regardless of whether it's by unordained men, unordained women, whatever. So then the question is, okay, so then why is it important to ordain our officers? Why is it important to do that? We see all these churches down the road, that they seem to work okay, and they don't have ordained officers. Why do we need to have ordained officers? What's the example from Scripture? Forget the BCO. What does the Scripture tell us about that? And I think that's where we're running into problems, because a lot of the churches that you will find that have unordained diaconates do still have men in those roles. They also often still have women in some corresponding role. But they're just not ordaining them because they don't value ordination. And I mean, maybe that's an assumption, but it would seem to be the case that there's an undervaluing of what actually we're doing when we ordain.
Yeah, I agree. Foster, thanks for joining us.
There we go. I can find my unmute. How's it going, guys?
We're good. We're all here happy in the PCA, so we're happy to allow you to to guest in.
I didn't know if outsiders were allowed on PCA streams. Wasn't sure about that.
I don't know. I don't think it's explicitly forbidden in the Book of Church Order, so I guess we will let it slide tonight.
Good to hear.
So we're talking about the report. We're reacting to the report. Give us your, you can tell us, no one will believe you if you tell us your intentions behind why you did it, but you can tell us about some of the findings. We're talking about what are some of the biggest issues that we've found in it, and we're going to move towards starting to talk about what we can do. But yeah, you can give us what kind of engagement you've got on the report within the PCA in general. That'd be great.
A whole lot. Yeah. I think a lot. I've had, I don't know, 60 emails from 60 different teaching elders. I think the good elders are busy pastoring and doing good stuff and don't track the politics quite like progressives do. I know there's no progressives in the PCA, of course, like none whatsoever. And everyone that's in good standing is good, because what else could that mean? But
it's in the words.
Yeah, right. But no, I had a lot of people reach out. I think a lot of guys care deeply about it and understand that this is an incremental approach towards something that is, first off, these are like, if you take, if I can get you, I don't know how much trouble I can cause here. I'm not trying to cause, but if you take David Cassidy, what they've done down at Spanish River, right? You've got this category of gospel workers for men and women, and they can basically do, really close. It's like a list of bullet points, like 12 different bullet points on the things that they can use these gospel workers for. It does make one wonder, what do you do as pastors? But ultimately, when I looked at it, I'm like, what is this? This is a category that's not found in the Bible, right? Certainly not part of one of the ideas behind Presbyterianism is pure polity, right? We've worked real hard, and and as someone who would love to be part of Presbyterianism, I want it to be Presbyterian. And so this category is confusing has all sorts of problems with it. But we discovered that as we're looking at these positions that, that are not, if it's one thing, if commission just means appoint, like we have a women's committee at East River, although this did make me question that, but at East River, we just appoint women. There's no terms or anything. We just appoint them, and we can remove them too. And we appoint them to the committee. They help us prep for our women's retreat. They're good women. I trust them. I value their counsel. But we appoint them. We don't nominate, take them through officers training, put them through a candidate phase, and then have them elected, and then commission them, which is cool, because commission is a different word than ordain. And I can't figure out for the life of me, how's this not ordination by a different name? And why are you doing this? What's being accomplished here? Well, don't you care about women? Yes. We all have. All Christians have for a long, long time. It's half of us. And we've done it without this category for, a long time. And the only place I see categories like this that have these steps are liberal denominations that went liberal and led to the ordination of women. So we're just looking at stuff like that. And some of this comes from this book, Alongside Care, by Christina Fox. She's the general editor for it. It's on CDM's website, promoted by that committee within the PCA. And she has this idea that we need women to help come alongside elders and help women in crisis. Yeah, I don't, it's hard to object to that. That sounds fine. And I don't disagree with that. But you get to the appendix of the book, and she's got suggested like vows that they take in a public worship service. She even recommends that they do it on the Lord's Day and in public worship. And you're like, wait a second. Wait, there's been a couple jumps here that I'm not tracking. And so on one hand, I think some of these ministries are trying to get basically mothers of Israel, Titus 2 women involved in a little more formatted way to help with real needs. I mean, I'm not against that at all. But in other cases, this is very much approaching what in City Reform tells me. City Reform Presbyterian says we don't have shepherdess. I'll put that out there. I'll get that on Twitter at some point. But they had that paper on their website that talked about this third way of doing complementarian women's ministry. What a word salad that title is, right? It's like they have, I read that paper, and these guys are suggesting that you need these parallel boards, and you have like a board of women shepherdess, elder advisors. Sometimes they're called care teams because they're doing alongside care. And they've got then the deaconess board, which is like a parallel board to deacons, which is already a problem, right? Like what's the male version of deaconess? Well, it's just a male deacon assistant within the polity of the PCA, as I understand it. It's not a female deacon. It's a deaconess, which is an honorific given to women that assists the deacons board in the historic sense of like the original BCO of helping with women's issue, caring for the poor, stuff like that. But it's not an office, right?
Right.
And so we have all this stuff going around, and we just started collecting all of it. And I mean, the truth is, I'll tell you straight up, I wish there was like some money behind this and something like that. But I'll tell you what the truth is. The truth is Charlie Kirk got assassinated, and I was sitting on the back porch of a vacation home in Battleground, Washington, and I'm done playing footsie with this stuff. And I don't need the PCA. What it has to offer to me is a place to live out convictions. That's what it has to offer to me, right? A chance to be part of a college of pastors, a chance to see what I think is biblical polity lived out. I don't need the money. Our church is doing just fine. I wouldn't send any of the people I care about through Covenant College or CTS, not in a second. That's not where I send my people. It's more to live out a conviction. So if I'm going to bring my church in this and risk my reputation to join this denomination, despite what other people may think is the opposite way around, I have to explain to my church why these things are going on. I have to explain to my session. So I thought, I've known about this stuff forever, for a long time. Like back when I was in the PCA, I thought Revoice was downstream from this. I think Revoice is downstream from this sort of type of egalitarianism. So I'm all fired up like anyone that has a soul was after a young father for talking reasonable, right? Milquetoast, middle of the road republicanism from the 80s, right? It gets assassinated. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start posting everything that I know online. I'm going to, first off, you don't dox people when they, like, my name's Michael Foster. If you put me on a list, I'm public. Like, I'm on my website. I'm a public person. If you put people on the website, you're a public person. That's
church officers are public persons. You're fulfilling a public office.
Yeah, like shepherdess. And they had all these people on there. And so I just started sharing all that stuff. And then at some point I tagged it Save the PCA because I thought it was witty and catchy and kind of funny. Because what are they going to say? You know what they're going to say? The PCA doesn't need saving. That's what they're going to say right away. And everything's just fine. And and then some other people see what we're doing. We meet at first, just me, and say, hey, here's this data sheet I put together. And I take a look at it, and I was like, hey, that's really good. It's kind of like the one I did. And then we just start going through and tabulating it. And that's how it came about. That's all. And then we put the website together and shared it. And then I thought, well, maybe people get riled up and actually do something to stop this, because this is coming through very powerful churches that plant lots of other churches, right? So like it may be a smaller percentage of the churches, but these are churches that are in metro areas that have a lot of money and are very active in church planting. And perimeter, I think at some point Presbyterians have to stop being Southern gentlemen and get a little Appalachia or something else in them, and shoot straight. Like these churches are very soft on a bunch of things in all sorts of. Does that make them apostate? Well, would you recommend Corinth to a friend? Hey, I know this church in Corinth. Hey, that church has. What about the guy with his mother-in-law? No, I wouldn't. But is it a real church? It's a real church. So I'm not trying to say they're apostate, but I'm saying this is bad.
Right.
This is real bad stuff. So I thought, let's just get this out here, and it started taking off. People got really riled up. This stuff will spread. It will spread very quickly. And I love that everyone says that Presbyterianism is slow. Due process should be slow, like slow according to the book at least. But don't be a house cat, right? Yeah. Don't use that as an excuse just to sit around and do nothing and think that we couldn't. If the PCA gets lost, it is a major hit for the reform movement in America. It's a very significant loss. So that's kind of behind it. There you go.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I think we just need the will to govern. And so this is obviously why I'm glad that we have all the PCA elders we do here, because again, I just want to make it clear, if you are a PCA elder and you care about this, you will be in the majority. We can act, we can govern. And so I'd like to ask the other PCA elders here. I don't want to keep the stream going all night. I would like to just hear from some of you who are much smarter than me. What are some of the things we could begin to do within our denomination in order to investigate, to act, whatever the steps are, or steps you think are possible or necessary? And please don't start with a BCO amendment. I will be a little less excited about that 3-year process. But yeah, you can suggest that. I'll just argue against it for a little bit. But what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
Well, but Matt, if you'll allow me, but before we maybe go down that path, because that's the great path. Like we can sit here and be in an echo chamber where people say, yeah, that he's so angry, she's so angry, everybody's so angry, but then what? Like, what are you actually going to do? How are you going to be pastoral about it and not just be an angry lunatic on the side of the road? One of the things I just want to say as well is it's challenging and it frustrates me, because when we see the roles being mixed up, it bothers me, because it indicates that we don't value the female role in the church well enough. Like the role that God has given them is a beautiful role. I mentioned the other day that like I had a committee meeting in our church 2 nights ago, and there were 4 women involved in that committee, and they are working hard. They are working diligently. They are a model of lovely Christian community. They encourage me. I see their diligence and just interest in the church prospering well, and I'm inspired to do better because of it. They don't feel belittled in any way. They feel lifted up, like they're contributing in extraordinary ways in our local church. Mm-hmm. And there's just a myriad of things that, like, when we bring everybody and say, like, well, you're actually you're actually this, and you're actually on, like, we need to bring you on par with an elder. We need to bring you on par with an ordained deacon. We're basically telling them they're not good enough in the role that God has given them. And that bothers me. Like, that hurts me. Sure. I have daughters. I don't want them to think that inferior because they're not a man.
Right. Churches need godly women. Godly women want this to happen, and women need pastors too, right? It's a good word, Eric.
Well,
Robert, go ahead.
Robert, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is not anything groundbreaking in terms of what we can do, but I think from my perspective, one of the first things I'm kind of working on is I'm trying to figure out exactly, like, on a church by church basis, particularly like sort of within my scope, right, in my little slice, my little corner of the kingdom here, is I'm trying to figure out kind of those specific definitions of what's actually happening. So like when it comes to the office that it is being, or the title that's being used, like I think some of my initial questions are like, what exactly is this person doing in this office? Because I think people are using terms differently. That is a product of not going by the terms that are in the BCO, right? If you're just inventing stuff, you're going to have all these different terms, and it's not going to be uniform, and nobody's going to know what anybody's actually talking about. And so I'm focusing on like, what is this person doing in this role? So I need to know, like, distinctly, what is the definition of this position? What's the definition of this title? What is the expectations of this person? What, are they holding authority? Like, what kind? Where's that authority coming from? So I think those are some like specific questions I'm asking. I'm also very interested in what does the church who is doing these sort of commissioning ceremonies or whatever, how do they distinguish that from ordination? Because like you can even use, like, again, to refer back to the study committee on women in ministry that the PCA did in 2017. Like even in that document, I know it's not constitutional binding, but it's sort of broadly referred to in a lot of these conversations. Like even in that document, it specifically says like you need to have a specific answer of how you're distinguishing ordination from commissioning. And I think that's an answer that elders are allowed to ask for. And I think that's perfectly legitimate for you to go to a church and say, hey, what is the difference? Like, I think maybe like you could get away with it a while back when people had these, maybe this sort of shared texture of like, what is ordination? Kind of going back to Eric's point of like, do we actually know what our doctrine of ordination is? But I've got friends that are coming to PCA churches for the first time because they're my friends and, they know I just got ordained. And so they're checking out their local PCA church. And, they're coming to me and be like, hey, like what's going on here? I don't understand the difference. Well, that's the member of that church deserves to know that answer. And elders who are charged with overseeing the church have a right to know those answers too. So I think, a very basic thing you can do is if you see this kind of stuff happening, in your backyard or whatever, start asking those specific questions, get those answers, because those are things that elders can immediately start to keep people accountable on.
Yeah. Jacob.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of piggybacking off Eric a little bit, on the ground level, I think part of our job as pastors is going to be working in our congregations against egalitarianism. I think we'd all agree that it's a pretty big idol in our culture. It's in the air we breathe. It's everywhere. And we need to be bold in striking against it, because the pastors who are doing this, who are having these functional female officers, they're not, at least I hope they're not, I don't think they are, they're not forcing these women to take this position against their will, right? That this is something happening beginning in the congregation, maybe with the leaders, nudging, but in general, it requires both. And so I think the more we can work to fight against those temptations and fight against that mindset in our own culture, equipping our men to be leaders of their house, strong, equipping our women to love their husbands, to raise their children, to love being men, to love being women, to recognize God's goodness in masculinity and femininity, so that there isn't, or a less, impulse to go towards these types of things. Because I can't control what they're doing anywhere else in the presbytery, but I can get to know my people, preach and teach in those ways boldly. And then Also, I think encouraging each other. I really appreciate this podcast. I know I've been kind of quiet. I made a mistake. I forgot I was doing it. I took 2 melatonin about an hour and a half ago. I was like, I'm ready for bed, and so I'm feeling it now. But I appreciate it, and I'm really glad to hear this because it's encouraging to see other men speaking out and talking about this. It encourages me to do the same, and so I'd encourage all of us to. If you feel these ways, don't be silent. Don't be quiet. Encourage someone else. Back them up. Pray for them. Pray for your other brothers in ministry, other ruling elders in the PCA. So,
I'm gonna put a question from the chat to everyone here, but I do think, and this is what Foster said. This is what I've learned actually from the pastor that I pastor with here in Eau Claire, because it is not like me as a Midwest nice guy, is you're just going to have to lean into conflict. Like, there are men you disagree with, and it's time to go talk to them. Like, and the closer you are to the person, the better. And we should have process, we should have formal process, but we can't ignore you just actually clearly, directly, and obviously, like a sane person, engaging with them. John, what did you want to say? And then I'll throw up a question that I think's a decent one.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you poo-pooed BCO amendments on the front end.
Oh, please bring one.
You have to do
feel free.
No, you have to do everything.
Have one. We have to have one.
No, everything. You need to have overtures. You need to write letters to presbyteries. You need to call people you know. You need to talk to people in your presbytery who are other elders. People who are congregants in churches who are uncomfortable with things happening in their churches need to tell their session. And if their session doesn't want to listen, they need to find who the clerk of their presbytery is. This is not a one avenue thing. Right. I think I'm even seeing this already online. Okay. So Michael gets dragged for being the, tip of the spear on all this stuff. Thanks, Michael. But now there's people posting, articles about it, and it opened the conversation to have more dialogue and debate. So if you have a blog, you have some sort of write something about. If the conversation stops, in 15 days at the end of October, then nothing's going to happen. There are processes and opportunities to continue to push this ball forward. And yeah, maybe it's a BCO amendment, and whether or not that fails or not, okay, that's only one avenue. And I think amending the BCO is just going to be another way to have deflection and just change terms. And the other thing I've just really been thinking a lot about is the courts of the church can do things. So by saying there's nothing we can do about it because it's not explicitly stated in the BCO this way or that way is fighting on turf. It's giving away the whole game before we've even started.
That's right.
No, the presbytery can rule how it wants to rule. The General Assembly can rule how it wants to rule on things.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how one person says, well, it doesn't, technically it's not a thing. It's the body that's ruling on whatever issues before them. And so, you have a candidate coming for licensure or ordination. You have a church that's coming with some issue, charges that have been brought against, an overture coming to GA. All that matters is people showing up and doing what's right.
Yeah.
As it turns
that's
out,
really
we
good.
can govern. We can go, as it turns out, we can govern.
We can govern. I want to add something to that point. Sometimes you get bogged down in the nerdery of, well, it doesn't use this word or that word. But as a recent friend of our podcast, James Baird, who has a great book, everybody should go get it, King of Kings. But as James Baird talked to us recently, and he just pointed out, hey, how you read a legal document, which is kind of how we would read something like the Book of Church Order, is it's not about even the specific words. It has to do with what good was meant to be accomplished. I hope I'm not butchering this, James. He can write in and tell us if I butcher it. But what was the good meant to be accomplished when this was written, right? What is its purpose? What is the good it is accomplishing? Well, we just had an amendment to our BCO to try to stop some of the using of ordained terms for those who are not ordained.
Fun
because
fact,
we knew this was
pastor
going
means
on.
shepherd. Fun fact, pastor means shepherd.
And
That's
and the
true.
word pastor means shepherd, right? And
Fun fact.
shepherdess is the feminine form of the word. We're not stupid. It's just the tedious thing. I've often told Matt, if there's anything that's just gonna make me hate Presbyterianism, it's the tedious, nitpicky, well, it's not the one word, and so we can't really do anything. Of course you can. Of course we can. We know what shepherdess means. We know what deaconess means. Now, does this have to be dealt with in the same way in every case? Of course not, right? We're pastors. We know that. We're elders. We know that. But we can, like John just pointed out, start going about doing our job in every way that we can. Fighting this battle on every front that we have to.
Right. So the question someone asked is, would it be unchurchmanlike to mass 31-2 sessions and presbyteries to force a precedent? So this person is asking about engaging process or engaging in investigations. I will simply say my point on this. Obviously, if you're doing this to simply ruin a presbytery, that they have to do all of these things, that's bad. But if you're asking them to investigate something where it appears, where there's evidence they have provided on their own live stream or website that they are in violation of the scripture in the book of church order, I don't think that is unchurchman-like. And someone, I'm willing to be corrected by anyone else on the panel on that point. But I do think we have to investigate, because
probably better to start with the 40-5.
There you go. I should pull it up. I would pull it up.
Yeah, you want the 40-5 to force the investigation.
Yeah,
you need to write it very carefully. You'll get rejected on technicalities if you don't.
Right. And so I do think there do need to be careful, and we don't need to believe Michael Foster just because he showed up to this live stream, everybody. But we do need to investigate these things. We do need to actually care. I mean, that's all I have is we actually just have to care. We actually have to have the will to govern. We actually have to do these things. And I'm happy that John said that I'm not going to be against BCO amendments now. I'm just going to go. I like John's solution better. Do them all. Do it all. I like that.
Matt, I think you said something very important as well. Like, a lot of this is very public. Well, obviously, or else that it wouldn't have been found by looking at websites and YouTube videos and things like that. But if you got the opportunity to go talk to somebody like that, that's a great thing to do. We ought not lose track of that. You might yet win a brother, as we've been told. So that's a wonderful thing, because there may be opportunities you have to minister to them. You may, I don't know. There's just a lot of pastoral opportunities that get opened up that way, and a lot of things. As I visit with people in my own local church that have hard times occasionally with various people, and 9 times out of 10, it's because it was a correspondence that was done from afar, whether it was on a text or an email or something. And I would imagine that social media might even be worse. So if we can get more in person or phone calls or things like that with people that we don't necessarily we don't understand what they're doing, maybe I don't see that as being a bad thing. I also respect the process. Like, I respect the 40-5s and things like that, where I saw something that looked funny to me. I don't live over there. I don't live in Wisconsin. So maybe I'm going to send something over and just say, hey guys, check it out, because it looked funny to me. And, I care about the bride of Christ enough to care that she is conducting herself, or her people are conducting herself in such a way that it honors him in the way that he has told us to worship.
That's right. I love that, Eric, and especially in engaging with others, because the worst thing that can happen is I learn we actually disagree. That's the worst. There's nothing else. So, all right, we need to start wrapping it up tonight. I'm so thankful. And so someone asked, it would be bad if we talked about this for 15 days in October and then never again. Michael and I have already, Michael as listed, Pastor Michael on this screen. We are going to just basically do a live stream about this every month, at least until the General Assembly, inviting different people. We believe that we want as many PCA elders talking about this, talking about what they're doing as possible. I think it sounds like it will be quite easy since Michael Foster's here. We think maybe the best thing we can do next month is interview people who worked on the report and talk to them so people understand what they did, their methodology and whatnot. And so, but we'll be talking about other things. But because we are not going to give up. And so, just any thoughts from anyone else on the panel? Yep, Corey, and then we'll just go around. We can let everyone go here before we end.
Eric said something earlier about, how degrading this is to the women when we act like they need, some kind of affirmation of a role to be important in the church. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I also think that it's incredibly degrading to our actual elders, to the ruling and teaching elders to pretend like they aren't decent enough godly men to minister to the whole church body. So no, they need women to come on board and really give their 2 cents, their opinion or whatever, because they don't know how to minister to women, and I mean, where does that end? Do we need children to come sit in on the, on the session as well? Because we don't know how to minister to children. I mean, that's such an insane litmus test to go from. And so I just, as we talk about this whole topic, that's another thing that has bothered me since day one is what an incredible backhanded slap to the elders that we currently have, that, they can't minister to the women in their own church, which, to Eric's point, I have 2 daughters and a wife. That means I'm not washing my wife with the water of the word. I'm not raising my daughters as I am my son in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. Somehow I just am, my testicles somehow apparently make me incapable of speaking to women. That's incredible to me. And then secondarily to my good friend John St. Martin's point, I agree. Do it all. So I am currently writing an overture. I'll put it out there. So you someone watching or someone on the panel, email me and tell me how stupid I am if you like. I'm pretty hard-headed, so good luck. But I'm writing an overture to totally reorganize the admin committee, because I think we need to tackle this from every possible standpoint that we can. I think the admin committee needs completely restructured. I like the fact that we have 20 members, because in an abundance of counselors, there is wisdom. I think I've read that somewhere. But the idea that 9 of them are committee heads that get a vote, let's just say it out loud. That's insane. They all vote as a block. We know they do. They all cover each other's backs. We know they do. To Michael Foster's point, CDM has pushed some of this, as have other committees. So I'm writing an overture that says we keep 20 people, 12 teaching elders, 8 ruling elders. We vote for every single one of them. The committee heads can sit in and give advice and counsel, but they no longer vote. And if you've served as a committee head, you have to have a 3-year waiting period to be on the admin committee after you've got off of as a committee head. So that's going to be coming to my session next week. And my session, I think, will vote yes on it. Then we'll send it to my presbytery, where I think it will also pass. What's done next year at GA with that, I guess we'll see. But so I mean, I think this has to be, to John's point, this has to be tackled at every potential front. One of the things that I think I follow a lot of politics, and I think one of the most brilliant things Trump's done in his second term is he blitzed them. They had no time to keep up with what he was doing. So he overwhelmed the left with just I'm gonna hit you so fast and so hard and in so many ways that you can't possibly stop them all. And I think there's an incredible wisdom to that. So I think if we take a page out of Trump's second term playbook of, just overwhelm them with, we're gonna pass so many things that you're gonna be gasping for air. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I am honored to serve with men like these.
We're happy to have you. I'm honored to serve like you, because frankly, I am barely smart enough to understand what you were describing in your overture. And so this is why I need these live streams, because I need to actually learn. Foster, you wanted to add something here before we leave? We'll go to others after you.
I didn't want to. I will add. I think what I just tell any churchman is that you have to put aside how you just can't care how people portray you. If you're a man of conviction, if you have a spine, if you actually believe in your vows and the things you vow to uphold, it's not you calling someone bad. It's not you calling someone a wolf. It's not you being divisive. None of that stuff. If you're saying objectively, this is a contradiction of this, and if the answer isn't like, no, here, let me show you why it's not. If it's like, hey, why are you worried about this, man? Like, what are you going through right now? If it's any of this sort of gaslighting nonsense, then you just have to not care about it. Right. And you don't have to respond to stupid things. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be nasty. But if you live for man's approval, there's no hope, and you should just give up and go do something else. Right. But if you have a willingness to see these things through, I think there's just a lot of guys who are either busy or don't want to get bullied on. And if there's enough people, it doesn't take that many in the PCA, I don't think, actually. I actually think, every time someone told me to stop being so public, I just put something else out, and they can tell me again, I'll put 10 more out. It's not going away. This is not ending today. I'll do this every month until then. And other people are taking over, so I don't really have to do that. I think this good men back each other. You're not trying to preserve something for the good of your children. Trying to see the PCA make it far past 50 years, right? It seems like every denomination breaks apart at about 50 years. If it gets that far, to see something that could last for long, it's worth fighting for. And I just think you just have to stand up to pressure from people and realize that some people, what does scripture say about smooth words, right? And they're like knives. People smile, polite. Yeah, there's a lot of people that say one thing and mean another. Most of the New Testament are elders disciplining elders, and so just having a willing to do that. Also, if these guys are doing this, and they shouldn't be doing, you're loving them, you're correcting them, protecting them from God's judgment, from the stricter standard that they're being held to, from the deep regrets they'll have if their eyes should open up what they did to their church. You have a brotherly duty to care for other elders who are erring, because I don't know if some of you guys listen to any of those. I did 2 spaces. In one space, there was a brother, his arguments he was making to justify what he was doing were bad. Right. And I don't think he had thought through it. I was polite enough to say, you sure you want to be making that argument? And I think there's some guys that just really don't know better. Maybe they did come in from the EPC or they just haven't thought through it and need someone to call them up and challenge. So I just say, have a spine, do it. People will love you. The winds are blowing different directions. The years of coddling and gaslighting and canceling could come to an end if people would just push. I think you guys got it. I'm for you.
Thank you. And I think the peace and purity of the church is worth it, right? 100%. For everyone here, for the men and women in our churches, for the kids. Anyone else want to jump in here before we, John, go ahead.
Yeah. You might not like Michael Foster's report or the methodology or him personally. I don't like him personally. I'm just kidding, Michael. But the fact is, this has been put out. and its accuracy, you can debate it if you want and all that kind of stuff. But if it's in your presbytery, if this has hit to your presbytery, we're really duty bound as elders to at least consider what's been presented and to engage locally. So my presbytery is not on the list. We're in the backwoods, the PCA, we're relatively conservative. We have all sorts of other issues going on in our presbytery. And my main focus is helping and engaging there. And if your presbyteries come out, one of our calls as elders is to lay aside our bias or even the source of maybe who told us something about whatever, and to see if the claims are true. And perhaps somebody got caught in the net, innocently. And so, you can investigate that and move on and maybe even, send them an email and say, hey, this actually isn't what's going on. I mean, they've opened that up. But I think that's really the call now, is not this, broader online discourse. Of course, we have overtures and all that, but it's, I forget the number of presbyteries that is kind of, about half the presbyteries maybe have some sort of potential, violation. If you're one of those presbyteries, it's really important for you as an elder to, take it upon yourself is this true? Maybe I'll reach out. Maybe I know this guy. Maybe it's my own church, whatever that is. Presbyterianism is supposed to be local, and that's great because we can talk to the person. It also can be hindered because we're local to our friends and we're going to dismiss it because, well, they're my friend, or they support our church, or whatever the thing might be. But I think the call now is to lay aside our bias and our prejudice related to maybe, where this came from or how accurate it is, or whether or not Mark Driscoll is at a conference, or, all these things, and just say, hey, this is what it says. Let me look into it myself personally. I'm not going to do an online investigation. I need to look and drill into this myself. And if I have questions, I'm going to ask them. And if I have concerns, I'm going to raise them. And I think that's the calling that we're at now as local churchmen.
Yeah. Any other? Yes, Jacob.
Yeah, I would just say, I think someone said earlier, I can't remember who, so I apologize. But someone had said, we need to get comfortable with conflict. And I think that's true. We need to be comfortable with godly, holy conflict, loving our brothers enough to go to them, to speak to them, to call this kind of stuff out, to be bold. But also, as I was thinking through it, someone had posted some retweet or tweeted about this, and someone said, what do we even do about this? And I was like, man, I don't know, ultimately, because this is the functional female officers is a symptom, I think, of a deeper issues dealing with our view of ordination, our view of men and women, our view of scripture, our view of all kinds of things. And I think it's going to be, well, I like this, and I want this to be, a first step in handling this egregious symptom. I think it's a broader conflict than just that. And so I think we do need to be willing to be direct, be willing to be to fight for the PCA, to contend for it. I mean, that's the hashtag, right? Save the PCA. That implies that there's some conflict, some difficulty to overcome. And so I would just encourage us to love our brothers and to not grow weary in doing good or fighting for our denomination.
Well, guys, this has been great. As I said, we are going to continue talking about this because we have decided we're going to go the distance. We are going to govern, and we are going to choose to have fun doing it. I'm sorry, there's no other way for Michael and I to go forward. But so we will catch you all of these guys. If you want to ask questions about this, you can find them on Twitter and various places. Michael, is there anything else you want to add before we take it out of here?
No, grateful for these men, grateful for those of you who are in the chat as we continue to think through best ways forward here, and look forward to doing a lot of work with you, gentlemen.
All right, we're going to end it, and so we'll catch everyone next time. So
A small Cambridge inn called the White Horse. The Reformation came
Restless is raw, unscripted, reformed radio.